Have you ever had that feeling where you're standing in an incredibly old, just deeply historic location, and you get this sudden, almost undeniable sensation that the past is just standing right beside you?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you know the exact feeling I'm talking about. The air suddenly feels just a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
The ambient modern noise sort of drops away, and for a split second, you feel like if you just turned your head fast enough, you might catch a glimpse of someone who lived centuries ago.
It's actually a remarkably common human experience.
Mhm.
We step out of our hyper-connected, fast-paced modern world, and we cross the threshold of a historic site,
Right.
and suddenly the boundaries of time just feel incredibly thin. It's as if the present moment is just this thin layer of ice over a very deep, very dark ocean of history.
Man, that is the perfect way to describe what we're getting into today,
Yeah.
because for this deep dive, we're heading up into the Adirondacks to look at one of the most historically dense and honestly heavily haunted locations in North America.
Fort Ticonderoga.
Yes, Fort Ticonderoga. We're going to explore how centuries of just brutal, world-shifting military conflicts
Mm.
basically created the ultimate atmospheric backdrop for a profoundly intimate and really tragic ghost story.
It's such a fascinating contrast, really. You've got this grand, sweeping geopolitical warfare crashing right up against a completely isolated personal heartbreak.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the ghost story, we first have to understand the sheer weight of the history sitting on this land. I mean, Fort Ticonderoga wasn't just some, minor outpost in the woods.
Not at all.
We're talking about a geographic bottleneck that was essentially the key to a continent. It sits right between Lake George and Lake Champlain.
Right, and back in the 18th century, there were no highways. If you wanted to move armies or move supplies between New York and Canada, you had to control that water route,
Exactly.
which meant absolutely everyone wanted it and everyone was willing to bleed for it. You have two massive overlapping conflicts centered on this one relatively small footprint.
The French and Indian War,
Mm-hmm.
and then right after that, the American Revolution.
Yeah.
And the casualty numbers and just the conditions these soldiers faced, they were staggering. Like at the Battle of Péron in 1758, the British forces took horrendous losses trying to take the fort from the French. Thousands of men were just cut down in a single afternoon.
It was devastating.
Yeah. And then a couple of decades later, you've got the Green Mountain Boys taking it, the British taking it back. It's just generations of soldiers.
Generations of adrenaline, of fear, victory, and agonizing death, all poured into the exact same patch of dirt and stone.
Yeah, that's wild to think about.
Well, when a physical space holds that much concentrated human intensity, it practically marinates in it.
Marinates in, I like that.
The soil, the timber, the heavy stone walls, they've absorbed a volume of human experience that's frankly hard for our modern minds to even quantify.
And that actually manifests for the people who work at and visit the fort today. Because according to our sources, it's not just one specific ghost haunting a single room up there.
No, it's a lot broader than that.
Right, it's described as this ongoing, almost atmospheric haunting. People report seeing period soldiers just casually appearing in the barracks.
Or they'll see flickering lights in areas that don't even have electricity.
Yes. Or they hear unexplained, heavy footsteps echoing down empty stone corridors.
The environment just feels saturated. Visitors are constantly interacting with a generalized paranormal presence.
So I was trying to conceptualize how this works, right? And the best analogy I could think of is an old VHS tape.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Remember when you'd record a movie off the TV, but you use a tape you'd already recorded over like a dozen times?
Oh, yeah, and the tracking gets totally misaligned.
Right, you're watching the new movie, but the old recording's never fully erased. So for just a second, a static-filled image of whatever was on there before just bleeds through the current picture.
That's actually a really good way to look at it.
That's Fort Ticonderoga to me.
Yeah.
The fort is the physical tape. It was recorded over by the French, then the British, then the Americans, and we are the modern recording, just walking through the site today.
Right.
But those previous events, they were captured with such intense life-or-death energy that they just keep bleeding through our modern picture. You hear the drumbeat, you see the soldier, the tape is bleeding through.
That is a great visual. But let's dig into why that bleed through actually happens.
Okay.
Are we saying the physical stone itself actually records the event? Because in paranormal circles, there's this thing called the stone tape theory.
The stone tape theory.
Yeah, it's the idea that certain minerals like limestone or quartz act as a geological hard drive, basically absorbing and then replaying emotional energy.
Which sounds incredibly cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, Is there any actual science to that?
Yeah.
Or is it just our brains getting spooked by big, creepy walls?
Well, what's fascinating here is the architectural psychology behind it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, whether the stone is actually retaining energy or not, the environment actively primes our brains. Imposing historic masonry like thick, cold, permanent walls. It is literally designed to make individuals feel small.
Oh, sure. It commands authority.
Exactly, a sense of authority and permanence. When you walk into a stone fortress that stood for centuries, your cognitive state shifts.
You feel vulnerable.
You do. It instantly lowers your modern defenses, and then you add to that the acoustic properties of stone.
Oh, right. The echoes.
The way a single footstep can bounce and distort down a long, dark corridor, your sensory perception goes into overdrive.
Right, because you're hypersensitive.
Exactly. The physical space creates the perfect psychological stage. It prepares you to experience the unexplained because you've stepped out of your comfortable, carpeted, climate-controlled timeline.
Wow, okay. So the grand military history, the imposing architecture, the distant sounds of marching, all of that is essentially setting the stage.
It's the backdrop, yeah.
Right, it's just the backdrop. Because the story that truly defines the haunting at Fort Ticonderoga isn't about a general, and it isn't about a soldier charging the walls. We have to zoom way, way in.
Very far in.
From an entire continent fighting for control to one localized, utterly devastating heartbreak.
The story of Nancy Coates?
Yes, Nancy Coates. So Nancy was the mistress of General Anthony Wayne.
Better known to history as General Mad Anthony Wayne.
Mad Anthony Wayne, exactly. He was a notoriously volatile, aggressive commander during the Revolution. And Nancy was living with him at the fort, and the historical notes say she began to heavily suspect he was leaving her for another woman.
We really need to pause and put ourselves in her shoes to understand the gravity of that.
Okay, let's do that.
Imagine the sheer isolation of being a camp follower or a mistress at a rugged frontier military fort in the 18th century. It wasn't exactly glamorous.
No, I can't imagine it was.
The conditions were harsh, the winters were brutally cold, and the society was entirely male-dominated.
So she didn't exactly have, like, a solid support network to fall back on if things went wrong.
Not at all. Her entire world, her physical safety, her social standing, and her emotional anchor in this incredibly harsh environment, it was all entirely tied to this one relationship.
Wow. So when she believed that anchor was being ripped away from her, she just unraveled.
Completely.
The sources say she was so consumed by the perceived betrayal and the impending isolation that she drowned herself in the lake right outside the fort's walls.
It's a desperately tragic end to a personal crisis, and it's happening literally in the shadow of cannons and garrisons designed for global warfare.
I really want to pause on that contrast because, honestly, it challenges the way we're taught to care about history.
How so?
Well, so what does this all mean? In school, you're given textbooks filled with the quote-unquote great figures. We memorize the tactical brilliance of commanders. We're tested on the dates of the treaties.
Right.
But when it comes to what actually leaves an emotional scar on a location, what visitors actually feel and resonate with centuries later, it's almost never the general.
No, it's not.
It's the tragic collateral damage of their personal lives. So I have to ask, why does Nancy's story pierce through the historical noise of massive world-altering wars?
I think it really comes down to the biological limits of human empathy.
Okay.
We can read about 3,000 casualties at the Battle of Carillon, but the human brain fundamentally struggles to process mass tragedy.
It's too big.
It's way too abstract. You can't emotionally connect with a spreadsheet of troop movements or a geopolitical treaty about borders.
It's the old idea that one death is a tragedy, but a million is a statistic.
Right, exactly. But every single person listening to this deep dive right now understands the fundamental concepts of love, of loss, and the agonizing pain of a broken heart.
Yeah.
You might not have the slightest idea how to command an artillery battery like Mad Anthony Wayne, but you know what it feels like to be vulnerable. You know what it feels like to be terrified of abandonment.
Wow. So her tragedy is basically scaled to the human heart.
Beautifully put, yes. That universal empathy is what makes her story survive. The grand military history is the imposing stone wall, but Nancy's story is the crack in the stone that we can actually slip our fingers into.
Oh, I love that.
Her pain translates effortlessly across centuries.
And it seems her pain literally hasn't left. Because people visiting and working at Fort Ticonderoga today make it very clear that Nancy hasn't just faded into the archives. She has a very active, very tangible presence on the grounds.
The reports of her are incredibly consistent, too.
They really are. People frequently report seeing a woman in 18th century clothing walking the upper walls of the fort or pacing down near the water where she died.
And the details of those sightings are always so sorrowful.
Yeah, she isn't just standing there being spooky, she's searching. Witnesses say she's crying, desperately looking for the man she believed abandoned her.
It's like she's trapped in a state of perpetual emotional suspension.
Yeah.
The trauma of those final moments was so severe that it just created an indelible loop.
There's actually one account from the sources that genuinely gave me chills. It came from a historical reenactor who was working at the fort.
Oh, right. This one is intense.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is someone who knows the grounds intimately, someone very used to the spooky atmosphere of an old fort at night. He swore that he heard a woman violently sobbing near the shoreline.
Just gut-wrenching sobbing.
Yeah, and so he went down to investigate, assuming a tourist was in trouble or something, and there was absolutely no one there, just the disembodied sound of a woman weeping by the water.
A purely auditory manifestation of grief. That's incredibly haunting.
What really struck me, though, were the sensory details surrounding these encounters. These sightings don't typically happen at high noon when, the tourists are buying souvenirs in the gift shop.
Right, of course not.
They happen on quiet evenings. People specifically note getting chills visiting the fort at dusk.
Dusk is key here.
Yeah, there's something highly specific about that time of day and where she's seen.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it actually makes perfect psychological and atmospheric sense. We're talking about the concept of liminal spaces.
Liminal spaces. Wait, so like an in-between space?
Yeah.
Like a hallway or a waiting room?
Yes, exactly. But applied to geography and time,
Okay.
the word liminal actually comes from the Latin word for threshold. Dusk is a temporal liminal space. It isn't day anymore, but it isn't quite night yet.
It's the threshold between light and dark.
Exactly.
And biologically, our bodies actually react differently at dusk. Right.
Absolutely they do. Neurologically, your vision is shifting. You're moving from relying on cones, which see color in bright daylight, to rods, which detect shape and movement in the dark.
Okay.
And during that transition period, your visual cortex basically struggles. It starts overcompensating, trying to find familiar patterns like human faces or figures in the shadows.
Oh, wow.
Your brain is literally primed to see things that aren't there. Or perhaps to finally see things that are there, but are usually hidden by the glaring light of day.
That is wild. So dusk naturally lowers the veil for us. But what about where she actually haunts the locations?
Look at the geography of her sightings. It's fascinating. She is always seen walking the walls.
Right.
The walls are the border between the safety of the interior fort and the dangerous wilderness outside. And she's heard crying at the shoreline, which is the border between the solid earth and the water that ultimately took her life.
Oh, wow. She's literally haunting the edges.
She's forever tied to the borders. She's trapped in a liminal space physically because she died in a liminal state emotionally.
That makes so much sense.
She was caught between hope and despair, waiting for a lover she believed was abandoning her. She never got that resolution.
Yeah.
So she just remains in a perpetual state of transition, haunting the boundaries of the day and the boundaries of the land.
That's incredibly poignant. And, it makes you think about our role in all of this.
Yeah.
Because as modern people, we don't run away from these ethereal echoes.
We really don't.
You'd think a place with weeping ghosts would be locked up and abandoned. But we do the exact opposite. We actively seek it out.
We invite the experience. We actively want to brush our fingers against that boundary.
We really do.
Yeah.
And Fort Ticonderoga fully embraces this by offering haunted history tours.
Mm-hmm.
They intentionally guide people into these liminal spaces so they can feel the past breathing on their necks.
Which is such a unique way to experience history.
It is. And there's a fascinating local tradition tied to this, actually. Just a really manageable drive from the fort is a place called the Alpine Homestead.
Right, the homestead.
It's become this unofficial gathering place where people go after visiting the fort. They sit around a fire pit and just share the unexplained things they just felt or heard in the dark.
A communal gathering to process the unknown.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting to me. The source material mentions that going to the fort at dusk gives people chills in the best way.
Chills in the best way, yeah.
We actually enjoy the thrill of touching the supernatural. But beyond just the adrenaline rush of a spooky story, why is sitting around a fire pit at the Alpine Homestead talking about a weeping woman from the 1700s such an important thing for us to do?
That's a great question.
I mean, couldn't we just read the plaque?
Well, sure, we could read the plaque, but the plaque only tells you who won the battle.
Fair point.
Sharing these stories around a fire is an act of historical preservation in its oldest, most primal form.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Long before we had textbooks or Wikipedia or massive museums, we had the oral tradition. Human beings sitting around a fire, passing down the triumphs and the traumas of their ancestors.
It's the original way we recorded human existence.
Exactly. Official history is notoriously clinical, and it's almost exclusively written by the victors.
Right.
It's written by the generals and the politicians. But folklore, ghost stories, those are kept alive by the people. When you sit around a modern fire pit telling the story of the reenactor who heard Nancy sobbing, you're participating in an unbroken chain of human storytelling.
You're pulling her out of the footnotes.
You're validating her existence. By feeling those chills in the best way, you're ensuring that a woman like Nancy Coates, who was completely powerless in life, who was seen as just collateral damage in an outpost commanded by famous men, isn't forgotten.
Yeah.
She isn't buried beneath the overwhelming legacy of the artillery and the treaties. The ghost story ensures she's remembered just as vividly, if not more so, than the men who built the walls.
That is beautifully said. The ghost story is basically the ultimate monument to the forgotten.
It really is.
It democratizes history. It forces us to remember the people who didn't get marble statues built for them in town squares. It says that a broken heart on a cold shoreline is just as worthy of our attention as a military victory.
It connects us to the humanity of the past, rather than just the politics of the past.
Yeah. As we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty amazing to look back at the journey we've just taken today. We started with a massive, layered, violent military history of the Adirondacks.
Decades of imperial warfare.
Decades of it. Thousands of soldiers marching through stone barracks. An entire continent fighting for dominance. And we follow that thread all the way down to the incredibly intimate, heartbreaking sound of a single woman sobbing by the shoreline at dusk.
Endlessly searching for a love she lost.
Exactly. From the overwhelming macro to the painfully micro.
A huge shift in perspective.
So, to you listening, the next time you're traveling, I really want you to keep this in mind. The next time you walk through the imposing gates of an old fort, or you take a haunted history tour on a quiet evening, try to look past the grand historical markers.
Look past the cannons.
Remember the weight of the personal stories. Think about the unseen, unrecorded tragedies that happen right where your feet are standing. Let yourself feel that heavy air and listen for the echoes.
And as you do, consider this one final thought. We've talked a lot today about visitors feeling that the past is still alive at Fort Ticonderoga. But when the modern world quiets down, when dusk settles over the lake, and a reenactor stands alone and hears a woman crying by the water, are those spirits really trapped in our past? Or are we, the modern visitors, simply stepping into their timeline for a brief, quiet moment in the dark?